this video we're going to look at speed, distance and time, and many students are familiar with this because they use it in maths and in science. But in geography we often are going to ask you either to work out the speed of a particular route or the time that it took us to take that particular route. We don't often ask you to work out the actual distance using this formula because we ask you to calculate distance using the actual measuring method and using the scale of the map. So when you are asked a speed, distance, time question, we're really going to focus on finding either the time that it took us to travel along a particular route using a specific speed, or we give you the time and you have to tell us how fast you traveled. So those are the two important ones that we're going to then focus on. We're looking for time and we're looking for speed. Okay, so when we look at our little triangle, just remember that it's like alphabetical. Okay, the D is at the top and then it goes S left and then T, or some students remember it as D, S, T and then the V, kind of that shape. Alright, so the first step that I often see students make as a mistake is that they actually put the letters in the wrong place, and that obviously is going to mess up your formula. So make sure that you remember the letters in the correct location. And then if we're looking for our time, the way the triangle works is that we're actually saying that the distance, if we're looking for time, we're saying the distance at the top divided by the speed, and that then will give us the time. And then if we are looking for our speed, we're then saying again distance, but now divided by time instead of distance divided by speed. Okay, let's look at some examples. The first one we're going to look at is a time example, and we're going to use the distance that we calculated originally in our distance video. And so the distance that we're looking at, it says, the question says firstly, calculate how long. So if it's how long, we know that it's a time related question. How long would it take you to travel along the N9? Okay, and our starting point is benchmark 786.9 in C2. Our ending point is the intersection with the R63, the arterial route intersection in B3. So if we quickly have a look at what that looks like on our map to remind ourselves of the route, you're starting here at benchmark 786.9. You're traveling, let's just make that a little bit thinner. You're traveling along that road and you're ending up at the intersection with the actual arterial route. And we obviously know that it's an arterial route because there's the R63 and it intersects with that, that highway. So we are looking at that distance between those 2 points. And when we calculated it originally in the distance video, we calculated that the route was a 3 kilometer route. So we've got our distance. Distance equals 3 kilometers. So we start working out what information do we have for our formula. Now we're looking for the speed, so for the time, so we're going to divide it by the speed at which we are traveling. And the question says you are traveling at 80 kilometers an hour. So we can, because there's a little rule you need to remember, that if you are working with kilometers, then we can divide with hours. But if you're working with meters, then we will divide with minutes. And you're not going to then swap the two. You're not going to divide kilometers by minutes, okay? Or an hour converting into meters, or meters into hours. You've got to keep those two conversions together. So the answer is in kilometers, and we've been given our distance is in kilometers, and we've been given a speed in kilometers. So we can say that 3 kilometer distance divided by 80 kilometers of speed, and that is per hour, is actually going to give us a decimal of 0.0375. Okay, and that's hours. So it's going to basically take you to travel those 3 kilometers at 80 kilometers an hour. It's going to take us 0.03 rounded up, 0.04 of an hour to actually get there. But that doesn't make sense. We don't talk about hours in terms of a decimal or a 0 point. We actually then talk about it in terms of minutes. So in order to get our answer into minutes, because it has the decimal, it starts with a 0, which tells us there are no hours and that these are all the minutes. But we need to convert them into minutes because they are currently in a decimal of an hour. So in order to do that, we times by 60, knowing that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. And that then gives us an answer of 2.25 minutes. So this part of the answer is the 2 minutes. This 0.25 is not 0.25 seconds, but then that would be again how you would have to convert it to get it into seconds if you wanted to, but you don't need to. Your final answer can be left like that, which is 2.25 minutes. So what that means is that we took 2.25 minutes to travel 3 kilometers along that road at 80 kilometers an hour. Let's have a look at an example where you travel a little bit slower, and so therefore it's going to take you longer. And so you might not end up with a 0 as your hours. You might have 1 hour here and minutes that need to be converted. So the same question, traveling along the same route, 3 kilometers of distance, but now we're going to travel much slower. So we're going to divide it by 2 kilometers an hour. Okay, and so if I say 3 kilometers divided by 2 kilometers, I get an answer of 1.5 hours. Now we know that that's 1 hour, but the 0.5 is then obviously needing to be converted into minutes. So then in your calculator you would say, you would leave the 1 because that's already in hours, and you would say 0.5 times 60, which gives us 30 minutes, and that then would be the converted answer. So 1 hour, 30 minutes. So that just shows you the contrast of whether you have that 0 as your hour or 1 hour and what to do with the actual decimal. Okay, so that's your time question, relatively easy. Then when we look at a speed question, we're going to look at the same route, and we're going to say, we know that it took us 6 minutes to get from the benchmark to the actual intersection. So what we want to know is how fast we traveled. So our key word here is now not how long, but how fast. Okay, so that's quite important. All right, now what we want to look at is, in our formula, we're going to be looking for speed. And so we need to say the distance divided by the time. Again, the distance, we got 3 kilometers there. We had previously calculated that already. But our time is 6 minutes, and I already said to you we cannot say kilometers divided by minutes. So in order to convert our minutes, we can, into a kilometer per hour answer, we can actually divide that by 60 instead of timesing like we did before. So we need to say 6 minutes divided by 60, and that will then allow us to convert our answer into a kilometer per hour answer. So 6 divided by 60 gives us an answer of 0.1. Now we can say 3 kilometers divided by 0.1, and that on our calculator divided by 0.1 is going to give us 30 kilometers an hour. So that means that we traveled at a speed of 30 kilometers an hour, and therefore it took us 6 minutes. So in the one instance, you're timesing by 60 to get rid of the decimal and put your minutes into hours, or put your seconds into minutes. Whereas here, when it's in minutes already and we want to put it into a kilometer per hour answer, we divide by 60.